amazing. It's an inspiration, and it was just beautiful to see all those pictures. Thank you for sharing all of that. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, and he is someone you all know, a GVC member who is present in almost all the activities we do in this club. He is our official photographer, bookstore manager, past ADK director, avid stargazer, and informed astronomer. Last year, volunteer of the year person. He's been very active in the ADK for many, many years. And tonight, Jackson Thomas is here to talk to you about the Yellowstone Caldera, a recent trip he took with his lovely wife, Shirley.
What do you think? Am I loud enough without the microphone?
No. Yes. No.
No?
No.
It was on. Is that better?
Yeah. No.
Okay, thank you. Well, Shirley and I, plus her sister Pat, who resides here in Henrietta with her husband, traveled to Colorado Springs almost exactly 1 year ago to join a third sister, Tina, and her husband Bubba, who reside in the Springs. And after spending about a week with them, we embarked on our journey from Colorado Springs to Yellowstone National Park by way of Cody, Wyoming. And we spent 4 nights lodging in Yellowstone National Park before moving southward into Grand Teton National Park. So this slideshow deals with, naturally, the Yellowstone Park, which is the first national park in our country, and it was established in 1872. It's a nearly 3,500 square mile wilderness recreational area located above a volcanic hotspot. It's mostly in Wyoming rather, but the park does spread into parts of Montana and Idaho too. Yellowstone features dramatic canyons, alpine rivers, lush forests, hot springs, and gushing geysers, including its most famous, Old Faithful. It's also home to hundreds of animal species, including bears, wolves, bison, elk, and antelope. In fact, there are nearly 300 species of birds, 16 species of fish, 5 species of amphibians, 6 species of reptiles, and 67 species of mammals roaming the park. There have been 3 calderas at Yellowstone as the North American plate moves slowly across our portion of the Earth's surface in a west-southwesterly direction. A volcanic caldera forms when a volcanic eruption is so massive that the overlying surface of the Earth collapses to form a huge depression. So you can see these calderas, and this is the outline of the present caldera. The current Yellowstone caldera formed about 640,000 years ago and measures about 34 by 45 miles. It is a volcanic caldera at an elevation of about 9,200 feet, whose last eruption was in 1350 BC. This supervolcano in Yellowstone National Park in the western United States is still active and is usually referred to as the Yellowstone supervolcano. Again, another view of the present-day caldera. And scattered throughout this portion are several major hydrothermal basins, with a few more up in this region up here. The Old Faithful geyser is located in this region over here, and there are entrances to the national park from the north, from the west, from the east, which is the entrance that we use from Cody, and from the south. This map of Yellowstone National Park is an excellent resource for touring and is available online. It identifies roads and lodging within the general terrain and locates the thermal features everyone wants to see. The Yellowstone River, alongside the main north-south road through the park, is not without some geothermal features. As you can see here, beyond the river on the other side, we have some hot springs and heated steam rising into the air from alongside the river. And this is just some of the geothermal activity that you will see repeatedly wherever you travel through within the park. Just a short distance beyond that point, the Yellowstone River goes through a lazy bend as it enters the Hayden Valley. Hayden Valley is one of the two major viewing areas for large mammals. The Hayden Valley is fairly flat, relatively featureless piece of terrain, but it's great grazing territory for large mammals, especially elk and bison. Hayden Valley in central Yellowstone Park is one of the two primary locations for viewing large mammals. The Lamar Valley in the northeastern Yellowstone is the other excellent location for viewing these large mammals, especially at sunrise or sunset. Unfortunately, the large mammals that you are hoping to see, especially bison, elk, if you're lucky, bear, wolves, don't always announce themselves in advance as you're driving through the park. As we came around, let me just back up here. As we came around this slight rise in the terrain here to our right, where the road goes out, curves around as it heads farther north, as we came around, just came alongside this slight rise, I, sitting in the passenger seat in the front so I could take photos while we're traveling, happened to catch a glimpse of this small herd of bison on top of this hillside. And luckily I was able to grab a photo while Bubba, who was driving our rented vehicle, slowed down just a little bit so I could then grab another shot with a telephoto lens. The Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone River is the most breathtaking sight in the park throughout its length of 20 miles. The canyon is up to 4,000 feet wide and 1,200 feet deep in places. From several vantage points, you can see the lower falls plunging 308 feet into the canyon, or the upper falls tumbling 109 feet. Mineral stains mark the locations of hot springs and steam vents in the canyon walls. The rocks are essentially rusting and turning yellow, red, white, and pink. The colors indicate the presence or absence of water in the individual iron compounds. Most of the yellows in the canyon are the result of iron present in the rock, rather than sulfur, as many people tend to think. Artist Point, with views of the lower falls, was named in 1883 for the location from which artist Thomas Moran sketched the canyon. As we eventually learned after his death, his sketching was really made from the North Rim and not from what has come to be named in his honor as Artist Point. This is a very popular portion of the park. Buses are bringing in loads of people. You just saw the back end of the parking area. It's a fairly large parking area. You have a 1/10 of a mile paved walk from the parking lot, and this being the most popular, one of the most popular locations within the park, is crowded even before the main tourist season begins. As you are making your way closer to the actual end of Artist Point, you get views, these views of lower falls in the distance, and of course there are conifers along the way marking various peep shows that you can see through them, looking through the openings and creating these nice framed vistas. You can frame them as much as you want. That's a matter of choice and your photographic needs. And our view of the tranquility and fragility of life usually underestimates an organism's ability to withstand daunting environmental challenges, especially the one that this tenacious tree gives as an example. This is the very end of Artist Point, and this lovely tree found a niche, a small enough crack, or actually a large enough crack, among the boulders comprising the actual side of this portion of the rock wall, to germinate, take seed, and produce this 20 or so, 25-foot tall tree. Here's a closer view of it as it emerges from the rock face. Doesn't take much to give life a foothold, but when it has an opportunity, it does take advantage of it. So as I said, Artist Point can be especially crowded, and we were here on the third week of June 1 year ago. And even then, before the prime viewing season, the prime tourist season begins in Yellowstone, this was one busy place. And for someone like me, who is trying to grab as many photos from as many vantage points as possible, I was really competing with some heavy-duty traffic here. I wasn't shooting with a tripod, which certainly helped me maneuver. But you had to be aware that people were along this rock wall, which comes all the way around like this, and they're posing for photos with members of their family or friends. And you just can't invade their space and say, well, I'm more important than you, and I want to go right up to the very edge of the rock wall. So you have to be patient, wait your turn, take your time, and spend more time there in order to be able to take some of the photos that you're hoping to acquire. Throughout the park, at various points of interest to tourists, are these wonderful signs. They are well labeled, they're highly informational, they give great detailed maps, and they're exceedingly useful. The beginning of the parking area for Artist Point looks like this. Restrooms here. There was usually a line there, as you would anticipate. On the entrance to this parking area, you pass the sign here, which leads you to a trail. It's the Uncle Tom's Trail, which is one of the most popular hiking trails on the South Rim. Why? Because it takes you right down the side of the gorge and ends in a viewing platform that is literally directly in front of the lower falls, not a great distance away. We were unable to view this magnificent portion of this south wall of the gorge because of that little sign right there that you can't see due to the lighting reflecting off the sign. But the Uncle Tom's Trail was closed at that time for maintenance, and so we were not able to enjoy that. And before we move on to another topic, here's one more view of the lower falls. The upper falls allows you to get very close, as you can with the lower falls. We'll come to that in a little bit. You can actually walk a short distance. As you can see here, the trail is 1/8 of a mile in length. It takes you right to the brink of the upper falls. Along the way, if you need to buy a trail guide, they've thoughtfully placed a kiosk here where it's on the honor system. You can purchase a guide. When you walk far enough on this paved path, you'll eventually go past the point where most people think they've reached the top of the falls, which is a very lofty overlook off the left edge of the trail. There's lots of mist rising towards you from below, and you can't really see any falls, but you have a feeling that, well, and as you look through the mist, you can see the gorge, or the river gorge below you. And you get the feeling that, well, you've arrived. This is the brink of the upper falls. Unfortunately, you have to walk a little bit farther, and as you go farther, you come to the hewn stairs. And within just a couple of minutes of descent down those rock stairs, here you are at the brink of the upper falls. Looking just to the right of where I was standing to take that photo, you can see the Yellowstone River just before it reaches the brink of the falls. If you hike a little farther along the trail that leads away from this point, you can walk a little farther upriver, and here's part of the Yellowstone River, a short distance above the upper falls. Again, more of the excellent signage, giving you valuable information. As you're driving through Yellowstone, the signs that they have provided for directing you to various parts of the park, such as this one right here, are done exceedingly well. We never got lost, and they were extremely helpful for allowing us to maneuver and optimize our time in the park. We spent 4 nights there, and in those 4, or roughly 4.5 days, we had enough time to see roughly 1/2 to 2/3 of the features that we could have seen had we been able to stay longer. So, when you drive to the North Rim, the road runs along the North Rim for a distance and offers a number of opportunities for you to look down into the Yellowstone River Gorge. At one of these points, you can actually see the viewing platform right next to the brink, here it is, of the lower falls. You can get that close to the lower falls, where it literally drops over the edge for over 300 feet. I'm shooting this with a telephoto lens. Another view of the lower falls from that same perspective. I was speaking about Uncle Tom's Trail. After winding its way through the forest from the road that was very near Artist Point, the beginning of the trailhead there, comes down and eventually works its way down this series of metal stairs, and eventually leads you all the way down to this relatively small viewing area. The falls, lower falls, are right over in here. So it's a great viewing point for a lot of water flowing right in your direction. Again, when you park the car along this drive following the North Rim, as I said, there are places for you to get out with overlooks. My brother-in-law, Bubba, is enjoying one of these views. Another view looking back toward Lower Falls, part of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone River as the river winds its way northward. Another location where you were able to actually, in this case, take a trail down to that viewing point that we already looked at. Along the way, you get to see the upper falls in the distance. It's a fairly steep descent, but is made from a number of switchbacks, and so it's a very easy downhill walk. The return trip uphill is much more challenging for most of the tourists, and takes you right down to the very brink of the lower falls. And when you're standing at that viewing platform that I showed you a few photos ago, with the falls directly in front of you, and you look down along the gorge, this is the view that you get, with even some icy patches of snow still clinging to the sides of the canyon. And here it is, nearly July 1. So Lookout Point is another area where you can stop your drive along the North Rim. This is the actual Lookout Point over here. There's part of the very short path trail that leads you from the edge of the road where you would park and walk through the pines. And when you do, and you look back toward Lower Falls, this is the view that greets you. In my opinion, this is a much better image than the ones I was taking from Artist Point. But you know, it's Artist Point that gets all the publicity and all the popularity. I don't know how many people manage to find their way to Lookout Point here in the North Rim, but as I just said, as far as I'm concerned, this is a much better image of the Lower Falls and part of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone River. There is a trail that leads from Lookout Point, descends along the side of the gorge, comes out down here, right along, and ends just above the river. We didn't have time to hike down that trail, but it would have been a magnificent journey, I know. The Norris Geyser Basin is again one of the most popular geyser basins within the park. This was the only place that we toured that offered serious problems with parking. Every place else that we visited within the park, we were able to find a parking place relatively easily, if not very quickly. We happened to time our visit on this day to the Norris Geyser Basin at just the right part of the early afternoon when everybody in the park seemed to have converged in this one location. But you work it out, you park farther away, whatever you need to do, and you walk, if you have to walk an extra distance. The Norris Geyser Basin consists of two basins of geysers, the back basin and the porcelain basin. And Yellowstone, if you remember, contains a lot of hydrothermal and geothermal activity. In fact, it contains more than 10,000 geothermal features, which is half of the world's geysers and hydrothermal features. Just imagine that. More than half of what's available throughout the entire planet are located within that approximate 3,500 square mile region of our continent. Thermophilic, or heat-loving bacteria, thrive at most of the geothermal features and create the various colors you will see in a number of my photos. Most of these species of bacteria live not only in water at extremely high temperatures, reaching the boiling point in many instances, but are usually at a very acidic pH. Not a very hospitable environment. I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong key. Okay, here we go. The Norris area. Periodically, you'll see signs that warn you about dangerous ground. They warn you to stay on the boardwalks, stay on the trail, do not stray. There are some recorded fatalities among tourists visiting Yellowstone Park. People who, for some reason, decided they simply had to leave the boardwalk, and regardless of how sturdy and how safe that surrounding system of land around the boardwalk appears, a few of them discovered could not put any weight on it without sinking. And a few people have been scalded to death, and it's a sad way to end your life because you weren't able to follow some simple instructions. But the signs are there, and they take great care to keep you safe. The rest is up to you. So, basin, as I just said, consists of a back basin and the porcelain basin. We had time to visit only the porcelain basin. I took a quick side trip while the other four remained right in this area in order to just get a brief look at part of what the back basin looks like and offers. But the back basin is extremely large, and in fact it has the highest geyser in the park. That's way, way back, and it's quite a walk back. And unfortunately, we didn't have time to visit any of those back there. So here we are, entering the porcelain basin. And you're going to see colored pools of hot springs, lots of steam rising, mudpots, fumaroles, which are spewing. It's hard to see the steam here against the background, but it's all emanating from this relatively small opening there. Again, various colors due to thermophilic bacteria living in this very extremely harsh environment. There's a sign down here which, on this sign, discusses how, with enough knowledge, you can estimate the temperature of the scalding water and these hydrothermal features simply by the color of the thermophilic bacteria residing there and making them appear with different colors. The beauty is unsurpassed, but it's also a very dangerous beauty. As I said a minute or so ago, I did take a few minutes to begin the trail into the back basin, And the very first feature that you see is this spring, hot spring, which is known as the Emerald Spring. And its incredibly blue-green color originates from the layer of sulfur along the bottom of this 27-foot deep feature. And that yellow sulfur combined with the reflection of blue sky gives us this lovely greenish blue color to this hot spring. Forest fires. Forest fires are an important feature for renewing the landscape, revitalizing it over a long period of time. And of course, as you travel around most of the western United States, you can easily see evidence of past forest fires. So forest fires may be small in scope, maybe even larger, like this one that we saw along the shore, along the eastern shore of Yellowstone Lake, within minutes of entering Yellowstone Park from Cody on the eastern entrance. People want to see bison. It's, I guess there's a romantic notion associated with it being reminiscent of the Old West. And we stayed at Lake Lodge, which is right next to the Yellowstone Lake Hotel. And this is Yellowstone Lake out here. And one of the first things that we saw as we drove up to Lake Lodge, and we stopped the car and went in and registered, learned where our cabin was located, was that there were 2 bison in this huge front lawn directly between us at the front of the lodge and the edge of the lake. And those bison were out there munching away, having a great time, feeding themselves. And as we saw for the next 4 days, those bison, I guess, lived there. This was their home in the park. And so you had a never-ending spectacle of these 2 bison as they moved back and forth in this large grassy field between us and the lake. Well, one day, when we came back from whatever we were touring that day, I was watching them for a few minutes, and I saw them start to move slowly to the right, to the south. And so I thought, maybe they'll continue moving that direction far enough until they reach the small road that leads at the edge of that large grassy area, leads back to the Yellowstone Lake Hotel. So I started walking briskly along the road that's in front of our lodging, keeping my eye on them, and eventually got around to the edge of the road. Here it is right there. Just see part of it. And of course there were these 2 young ladies there, and they had their camera ready, and the bison at that point had traveled far enough in that direction that they were nearly out to the road. At this point, those guys are roughly 60 to 75 feet away. And that's where they stopped. But that was far enough for me because I was able to get some decent images of this one. And as you can see, he's still shedding that coat. And here's how we usually saw them, in that large grassy area between the lodge and the lake. And of course, as you walk around that area, you want to make sure that you don't manage to connect with one of these little guys. This was an old dried one, and wouldn't have been a problem if you had to step in. Unfortunately, one of these two bison developed a taste, I guess, for the grass up among the cabins. As I said a few minutes ago, we were staying in one of the cabins. There were 6 rows of cabins stretched on a slight hill behind the lake lodge itself. And there was lots of grass growing between the cabins. So, the second morning that we left our cabin to walk down the dirt road, the gravel road, to reach the lake lodge and go in for breakfast, lo and behold, there was one of the bison munching away between cabins. And that's exactly where we saw that same bison for the next 3 mornings. He moved around, traveled from one row to another row, different cabin, and sometimes we even saw people who were staying in those nearby cabins standing dangerously close, too close, in order to take photos. But that's what some people will do. What you can't really see real well in this photo is right there, just touching the edge of the mountain on the far side of the lake. That's a full moon rising. We had just returned from walking a short distance toward the Yellowstone Lake Hotel, which was, as I said, nearby our lodge, over to the general store there in order to shop and buy some ice cream. And we were walking back with ice cream, and Shirley happened to notice moonrise right above the mountains. So we stood there for a while and watched the moon slowly climb higher in the sky. This turned out to be such a nice series. You're not seeing the majority of the series, the photos I took, but one of these photos became part of our Christmas card for 2018. One trail that we did hike is named Elephant Back Mountain Trail. It's about 3.5 miles with about an 800-foot vertical rise. Not a very strenuous climb, and it has a loop after 0.8 of a mile. And if you start right along the road, go in for 0.8 of a mile, then you come to a loop. This side is the steeper portion, and this is the more gradual, more leisurely portion up to the summit. Lodge pole pines along the way. Some cute little visitors. Tina, Pat, and Shirley practice their balancing. Finally gaining some elevation. Pat's getting her camera ready. Now we're not quite at the summit, but the summit doesn't allow you to view Yellowstone Lake like you get at this location just below the summit. So here we have a magnificent overlook of Yellowstone Lake, and there already was a family at this point ahead of us, taking a break, eating lunch. Dealing with the ground squirrels. This little guy was really ravenous. I tell you, he was not afraid to take something from your hand. During the descent, you encountered switchbacks to ease the burden of more steep terrain. It's a cute little note that some previous visitor to this trail at some point in the past left as a reminder of his or her presence. Lodgepole Pines. Elk. Up until the time I took this photo, which was early evening, up until this point, the only elk that we had seen were in Hayden Valley at a huge distance on the other side of the valley, far across the river. And I had not brought enough photographic power with telephoto lenses with me to be able to image those animals and show them in a decent manner. So I was really upset that we would probably be going home without any good photos of elk. Well, driving back to the lodge after one of these days, came around the bend and, oh my, look what's there off in the field to the right. So we stopped the car, and of course I immediately jumped out and tromped through a very wet meadow, as it turned out, to get to get as close to them as I could. And this beautiful bull elk. You never had to wonder where the animals were that were near the road, because as you drove along or came around a bend in the road, there ahead of you would be cars parked along the side, people standing along the side, people entering or leaving their vehicles. Well, you knew immediately you had to pull over too, because obviously there was something there worth viewing. So out you go, and you got to see whatever happened to be there. Here's one of the trees that suffered from elk rubbing the antlers in order to clean them during that portion of their annual development. Of course, the biggest draw in Yellowstone would be Old Faithful. Unfortunately, we had a terrible day to be there. It was raining slightly. Old Faithful Lodge is a beautiful structure. They even give you times for the next eruptions to help you with your viewing. So here it is, beginning to erupt. You can see umbrellas, you can see the sidewalk is wet, it's raining slightly. Not optimal viewing conditions, certainly not for giving a great photo. What you want is a nice blue sky with this white geyser plume in stark contrast against it. Not this time, sorry. But as the seconds and minutes passed, the plume changed. And of course you can't miss other volcanic activity, other geothermal activity far in the background. They provide seating, because the crowds here can be enormous, thousands of people. Again, some of the great signage that they use, in this case, to explain the difference in the various types of hydrothermal features. And this is the Old Faithful Inn. Construction began in 1903 during the winter, and they housed their first guests in the over 300 rooms in this facility in 1904. It's an architectural style that has come to be known as National Park Service Rustic, and it's just a fantastic building. If you like ornate wooden structures, this is the place to see, because the interior wooden construction of this inn is simply breathtaking. Multi-levels, old enough that the stairs have started to lean a little bit as Shirley ascends the staircase. Not from her weight, never that. Again, the magnificent woodwork. And by now enough time had passed that we were into the next cycle for the eruption of Old Faithful. Midway Geyser Basin. This feature right there was #1 on my list of what to see in Yellowstone National Park. Sure, Old Faithful is very, very popular, but for me, it was the Grand Prismatic Spring. And I simply had to get some good photos of that. Again, like we would have seen at Old Faithful, a nice blue sky would have really enhanced my photography. But at least it wasn't raining. It was simply an overcast day. Again, stay on the boardwalk. It may look like very solid ground, but it isn't. The edge of Excelsior Spring, next to Grand Prismatic Spring. There's a souvenir someone's not taking back home with them. Someone lost that small parasol. The park rangers at the end of each tourist season use special tools to retrieve objects like this that tourists lose in various geothermal features. Obviously, no one's walking. Here's a little, viewing platform called the Grand Prismatic Spring Overlook. It's on the side of this hill, and it really provides the best viewing point of the Grand Prismatic Spring, as you'll see in just a moment. You get to this point by taking the Fairy Falls Trail. Before we leave ground level here, another look. As we drove from where we parked here at this location, just down around along the road a short distance around the bend, to another parking area for the Fairy Falls Trailhead, we happened to come across this park ranger. And he was very kind to pose with Shirley, Pat, and Tina for a great photo. So here we are at the Fairy Falls Trailhead. And about to make our left turn off the main trail, to start ascending the hill. And after about a 10 to 12 minute walk, you climb uphill slightly, you come to the overlook. And this is what you see. There's the Grand Prismatic Spring below you. By the way, that line of mountains in the distance, that's part of the edge of the caldera, a number of miles away. This image of the Grand Prismatic Spring and the incredible colors ringing the actual pool, such a beautiful sight that it even made the front cover of National Geographic magazine a number of years ago. Perhaps you've seen that image. It's spectacular. Again, the various colors represent various thermophilic bacteria living in a very acidic and high temperature environment. And you can even determine in general the type of bacterium residing at that particular point on the surface from the color that it creates. And lots of people. And we're not even at the height of the tourist season. Here's an overview. And Grand Prismatic Spring, the Excelsior, and the Firehole River, which runs alongside. The highway runs right alongside, and you come around here, and you park in this area, and then you take this trail up the Fairy Falls Trail, and the red arrow there marks the overlook. Well, on the fifth day, it was time to move on. We were heading south toward the Grand Tetons for several days there. This is the south entrance. The cost for viewing all of these incredible sights is reasonably cheap. I don't know if you can read that very well, but it says there for a private vehicle it's $35. Excuse me for a moment while I wrestle with something and got itched. Now it escaped. Sounds good. Thank you. If you don't want to spend a lot of money and you are interested in viewing national parks in our country, and you are old enough to qualify for a senior pass, this is the one that Shirley and I bought 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess it was, when we visited Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. And for the princely sum of $20, its price has now risen about 3 times that much. You can buy a senior pass, which will allow you and the occupants of your vehicle to drive through that entrance station for free. This is one of the best deals going in the United States if you like to travel and you want to view national parks. Well worth your money. I'm going to close with this one static image before I show you 4 quick videos. This is a sow moose and her calf at the edge of Cottonwood Creek, Grand Teton National Park. We were approximately 60 feet across from them on the other side of the creek. So I'm shooting with a telephoto lens, and then I cropped it to increase the size even more. But this was the only moose sighting that we made in either park. So, let's see. I see. Okay. I had to find the mouse.
These are short videos, Jackson?
Yep, just a matter of seconds. So that is the upper falls. That's how quickly the river is moving at that point. If you think you wouldn't stand a chance by falling in the Niagara River just above the Horseshoe Falls on the Canadian side, believe me, you'd have more of a chance of rescuing yourself from that flowing water than you would from this portion of the Yellowstone River, because that water, as you just saw, is simply flying. And here we are at the actual brink of the upper falls. Just to show you what a hot spring can look like. Still erupting, scalding water down here. And last but not least, the mud volcano. can't really see the boiling muddy water down in here. There it is. Well, this is it. I hope that you'll have a chance to visit Yellowstone someday if you haven't already been there. Who's already been there? Fabulous. I hope you enjoyed some reminiscence there of your trip. Thank you so much very much.